Our understanding of baptism in the New Testament is that the meaning of baptism includes faith. It is an act of faith, an expression of faith, a dramatizing of that which can only come about through faith, namely union with Christ in His death and resurrection. It's not something an unbeliever can do, and it's not something an infant can do. That's why we don't baptize babies, because the meaning of baptism would be contradicted if we did. So, if you have your Bibles, I would invite you to go to Colossians chapter 2 with me. I'm choosing to go to Colossians 2 instead of a half a dozen other places we could go on this issue because of the personal relevance it has to me in my life. I grew up in a Baptist church, and so, you'd say, well, that's why you're a Baptist, because your mom and dad were Baptists, and that's why we're all what we are. Well, maybe. I wouldn't deny that the influence is strong, but my schooling, 4 years at Wheaton, where I discovered there are Christians that aren't Baptists, and then 3 years at Fuller, where I was overwhelmed with Reformed types, good many of whom were not Baptists and were wonderful teachers and blessed influences in my lives. And then 3 years in Germany, where everybody and his brother's a Lutheran, and I'm sitting in these seminars, and I'm the only American, I'm the only English speaker, and I'm the only Baptist, and everybody else there is a Lutheran, and they're all looking at me when we get to 1 Peter, in a class called 1 Peter, the Spirit and Baptism. And I'm trying in German to defend my views. Now, at each of those junctures of my life, this text was my life. That is, it's the place where I reposed, I rested. And I can remember looking Dr. Goppelt right in the face and saying, Colossians 2:12, Dr. Goppelt. Colossians 2:12. I can't get over it. I can't leave it. Don't give a rip what my daddy believed, what my mama believed, what Pastor Lawrence believed growing up. I believe what God says, and I can't get over it. And he was very respectful. He didn't mock me at all. He was a godly man, Lutheran man. So I'm going to read it to you and show you how it has functioned for me. We'll start at verse 11 of Colossians 2. In Him, Christ also, in Him, the Him is Christ, in Him also you were circumcised with a circumcision made without hands, by putting off the body of the flesh by the circumcision of Christ. And let's stop there. Let's get that strange language in front of us. Paul is saying that once there was a circumcision made with hands done to the baby boys of Israel, and now in the church there is a counterpart, and it isn't made with hands. You see that? Let's read it again. In Him also you were circumcised with a circumcision made without hands. This is a new spiritual meaning given to circumcision in the Christian church. There's no handwork here. This is a reality, and what is being cut away is not a foreskin. What is being cut away is the body of the flesh. That means, on the analogy of circumcision, that Christ is cutting us free from the old body that is so used to sinning. It's just dominated by sin. Lives in sin. It was only sinning, and He says, "Phew, we're cutting that one off. You still have a body, but the old one, your old man, your old person, thrown away." That's the kind of imagery it seems to be in Paul's mind here with the new meaning of circumcision for Christians. Oh, there's so much significance here, and you'll hear a little more of it as we go on. Let's keep going. Verse 12. Having been buried, now you see the sentence just continues with this participle, and the participle could be at the same time or before. It's just the way the language works here. You got to choose one or the other. So we were circumcised, having been buried with Him in baptism, in which you were also raised with him through faith. There it is. Those two words are everything to me. Through faith. In the powerful working of God who raised him from the dead. So, we've got this imagery of spiritual circumcision in verse 11, closely connected with baptism. You were circumcised having been baptized. Old body of flesh cut off, thrown away in conversion. I think spiritual circumcision is virtually synonymous with the new birth. You died and you rose again in baptism. That's dramatizing the new birth. So baptism is a dramatization of the same thing circumcision signifies. So they're really closely connected, are they not? Therefore, it's probably right. Not all Baptists want to say this. They get nervous when they say this. It's probably right to say that baptism has replaced circumcision as the mark of the people of God. Okay, we're getting real close to the way Presbyterians argue here. It's probably right to say that baptism has replaced circumcision as the outward mark of being part of the people of God. In the Old Testament, men, start accumulate the differences now. Start accumulating in your mind the differences. Men, not women, no baby girls get this sign. A little bit of an odd thing there. Aren't they in? Aren't they in? The Old Testament men were circumcised to signify membership in the Old Covenant, people of God. And in the New Testament, men and women are baptized to signify membership in the New Covenant, people of God. Got a couple of shifts there. Circumcision to baptism, men only to men and women. Now, that has led, that correlation between circumcision and baptism has led a lot of people, like billions, to believe that since circumcision was given to the male children of the people of God in the Old Covenant, therefore baptism should be given to the male and female children of the people of God in the New Covenant. There's the argument. Some of you asked me, are you going to address why people don't believe what you believe? Well, there it is. That's the nub of the argument. A sense of the continuity of covenants. And since the children of covenant members, at least the boys, got the sign of the covenant when they were born into a physical Jewish family. Therefore, when a covenant member, that is a Christian, has a baby born, it should be born into the covenant and be a member of the covenant and thus get the sign of the covenant, which is baptism, and therefore you got to baptize babies. There's the argument. I don't think it's very complicated. It wins millions of people. It must have something going for it here. Now, my effort over the last 30 years of trying to decide what I believe about this and coming down over and over again where I started is that argument doesn't work. It doesn't work textually and it doesn't work covenantally. It just sounds like it works. Let's talk text for a minute. Colossians 2:12. Having been buried with him in baptism, in which, now the which there refers to baptism, right? So let's just put it there. In baptism, you also were raised with him through faith. So in baptism, the signifying of the resurrection happens through faith. In baptism, you're raised through faith. In baptism, you're raised through faith. In baptism, you're raised through faith. That's the meaning of how it works. No faith, no resurrection. The symbolism falls to the ground. That's the meaning of baptism in Paul's